Welcome to End Communism. Today, I want to have a real talk about what's happening here in the US and how, if we don't protect our freedoms, we might end up on a path that looks a lot like what people are experiencing in China. You might think, well, that sounds extreme. But let me share some examples and see what you think. The reality is, our basic freedoms like speech, religion, and even the right to have a difference of opinion are at risk if we keep moving in the wrong direction. Let's start with the economy and what it means to have the freedom to make a living. In China, the government has a massive amount of control over people's finances, from restricting job opportunities based on political loyalty to using high-tech surveillance to track everyday purchases. The government has eyes on everything. Now imagine a future here where our government has that same level of control. People could lose job opportunities or be targeted for their beliefs. This is why many Americans voted to get things back on track and stop government overreach. We want to protect the freedom to work and live without being watched or controlled. But the control doesn't stop with the economy. It extends to safety and security as well. Let's talk about that. Safety and security are basic human needs. But in China, the government decides what safety looks like. They control law enforcement in a way that targets anyone they view as a threat to their authority. And dissenters are silenced, often very harshly. If we keep giving our government more power in the name of safety, it's easy to see how we could end up in a similar place. Many Americans feel strongly about having leaders who promote safety while still respecting personal freedoms. We don't want to see law enforcement turned into a tool that silences people, and safety goes beyond just law enforcement. Let's talk about the control over who comes in and out of the country. In China, border control is strict, but not in a way that benefits its people. The government keeps a close watch on who enters and exits, and even everyday citizens can find their travel restricted if the government disapproves of their views or behavior. Here in the US, a lot of Americans support border security because they believe it's about managing resources responsibly and ensuring everyone's safety. But if we don't keep our government accountable, we could lose that balance and end up with restricted movement ourselves. It's about managing immigration in a way that's fair and sensible without giving the government so much power that we end up with restricted freedoms. But it's not just physical control. There's a control of ideas and values. Let's dive into that next. One of the hardest things to witness in China is how the government shapes and controls culture. Religious practices, traditions, and even values taught to children are all monitored and restricted. People can't freely celebrate holidays, attend church, or even discuss different beliefs without fear of government intervention. A lot of Americans are seeing these kind of restrictions inch closer here, where expressing certain beliefs is met with backlash, even job loss. Many people who voted in this last election felt strongly about protecting our right to openly express our values, traditions, and religion beliefs without government interference. Cultural control is just one piece of it. There's also the power the government has over information itself. Here's a big one. In China, the government controls every single piece of media: the news, social media, the internet. Everything is filtered to fit the government's agenda. People are told what to think, what's acceptable to believe, and even what's true. Now, think about our own media here. If we continue down a path of media consolidation and political influence, we risk losing our independent voices. The freedom of speech we cherish is at risk of being filtered, just like in China, where only one narrative is allowed to be heard. This is why protecting our freedom to access information from multiple sources is so crucial. And this isn't just about adults. This is affecting the very future of our children. In China, the government controls education to the point where students are taught only what the government wants them to believe. Any criticism of the government or alternate viewpoints are banned from classrooms. We're seeing some shifts here in the US as well, with parents concerned about political agendas creeping into schools. Many people who voted in this past election did so because they believe in keeping education balanced, where kids can learn different perspectives and make up their own minds. This is about future, about making sure our children grow up in a country that values freedom of thought and speech. Finally, let's talk about what all of this means for us and the urgency to protect our freedoms. Here's the reality. If we keep moving in a direction that gives the government more control over the economy, over culture, over speech, we risk losing the very freedoms that makes us who we are. We are already seeing some of the warning signs, and it's up to us to protect what matters most. Whether you voted for Trump, someone else, or did not vote at all, this is a conversation we need to have. Let's make sure America stays the land of the free. Thanks for watching.